Welcome to the Lifestar Training and Education Center. My name is Todd and I'm glad you joined me today. Today I'm going to talk to you about MABAS. What is it and how does it work? Imagine you're the fire chief of the average fire department in Wisconsin. You're paged out on a structure fire. You drive to the address given and this is what you see. After a few choice words running through your head, the next thoughts are probably, do I have enough resources in my fire department to handle this? And if I don't have the resources, what do I need and where am I going to get them from? Well, if you haven't thought about those things before you see something like this, you're in a lot of trouble and you're going to be a very unhappy chief. So in Wisconsin and Illinois, they established the MABAS system. MABAS stands for Mutual Aid Box Alarm System. And what it is a pre-planning system for deciding what kinds of resources are going to be necessary for a variety of incidents that might happen in your community and who's going to provide those resources once you request them. Every MABAS participating agency has signed the same contract. So think of it as hundreds and hundreds of fire departments, all of whom have a contract with each other to provide aid, how they're going to provide that aid, and the system for requesting it and the system for responding. As a MABAS agency, you've agreed to a number of contractual obligations, and those include the standards of operation, the use of the incident command system to manage the incident, the minimum level of equipment staffing for various types of apparatus. Engines have to have a certain number of personnel, and those personnel have to have certain certifications. Ambulances have to be staffed by licensed people who have particular certifications, and so on. They also agree on the safety rules and procedures, and they agree on on-scene terminology so that everyone is using the same term for the same kind of apparatus and the same term for the same operation, so we're all speaking the same languages. And speaking of terminology, there are two big ones here. There is the aiding unit. That's the jurisdiction that is sending help, and the stricken unit is the jurisdiction that has the major incident requiring additional resources. The contractual requirements include the fact that the aiding unit, or the jurisdiction sending help, will respond upon request, or if they're not able to respond, they will notify the stricken unit that they're unable to do so. The aiding unit reports for assignment to the incident commander. They basically belong to the incident commander for as long as the incident progresses. If, however, for some reason that aid has to be withdrawn, they agree to notify the incident commander of that fact. All aid is provided free of compensation. No matter how many personnel you send, how many apparatus, how much fuel is used, or what kind of equipment is used or damaged, there's no bill for your services. If, however, the stricken unit does recover costs, sometimes insurance pays for costs, sometimes if it's a criminal act or negligence, they assess a fine for whatever incident occurred. If they do recover costs, the MABAS agreement includes a stipulation that those costs and funds will be equitably distributed among the responding agencies. All parties in MABAS are required to be covered by insurance. And all parties are considered free from liability for actions taken under the agreement. If you send an engine or an apparatus to assist in another community and something happens, unless it's a case of criminal negligence or gross negligence, you are free of liability. The MABAS agreement states that self-dispatching is not permitted. Self-dispatching is when a jurisdiction sends help that it has not been requested. This is important because it's a problem even today in Wisconsin. There are departments that just can't resist the temptation to get involved when they hear something happening in a neighboring community. You're not allowed to send anyone there under the MABAS agreement. You signed a contract saying you would not do so. And you're only allowed to send the equipment that was requested. If they ask for an engine and you don't have an engine available, it's not okay to send a truck in its place. If an agency does send the wrong apparatus, the dispatcher is supposed to recognize that and advise them of what equipment was due under the card and send the incorrect apparatus back home. Private vehicles are also not allowed to respond to a MABAS incident. It's not okay for an engine to leave with only 3 out of 4 required crew, and the 4th guy take his personal car to the scene and meet them there. You have to be in the apparatus that was requested and responding before you leave your station. There are also a number of agreements as to how to use the IFERN system. IFERN is a statewide repeated talk group, so various agencies can speak to each other during an incident. We all have different radio systems. Sometimes they're not compatible, but IFERN is compatible across all the radio systems. There's also an agreement as to how to use the fireground frequencies. Those are simplex frequencies, which means they're not repeated, they're not on a digital or a trunked system, and they're normally very short distance radio systems so that you can't interfere with operations in other communities. Typically these are fireground red, fireground blue, fireground white, and so on. The current MABAS system actually began in northern Illinois, where fire departments were more used to cooperating with each other on larger incidents. In Wisconsin, Senate Bill 642 was approved by the legislature and signed by Governor Jim Doyle on April 5th of 2006. In Wisconsin, MABAS divisions basically follow county lines. Every county is its own division. Not every county in the state is a participant in MABAS, but almost all of them are at this point. The only exception to the county rule is the city of Milwaukee, which has established its own MABAS division due to the size and number of agencies that could potentially be involved in a major incident in Milwaukee. So today, MABAS includes over 25,000 firefighters and 950 fire stations, over 1,100 engine companies, 375 plus ladder trucks, far more than 800 ambulances. They describe it as mostly paramedic capable. I'm not quite sure what they mean by that, other than possibly the ambulance has a door, so a paramedic could get on board if one is required. There are more than 150 heavy rescue squads and 135 light rescue squads, and then far more than 275 water tankers. They also have specialized teams for hazmat incidents, water recovery and water rescue, and then technical rescue teams. Technical rescue generally refers to underground rescue, confined spaces, and things that require ropes. At Lifestar, if you log into your EMS manager and you click on the storage button, you'll notice there's a folder that says MABAS, NIMS, and ICS. If you click on that folder, you'll see that there are many, many MABAS box cards that are stored there. If you respond to an incident somewhere, you can always log into your EMS manager on the way and download the appropriate box cards, so you'll have an idea of who else might be responding to that incident. It also tells you a little bit about what's going to be expected of you. Let's take a look at a typical box card, and the first thing you'll notice is there are a lot of boxes on the box card, hence the name. I chose Hartford because Hartford is a department that we do respond to on a regular basis. Let's zoom in a little bit at the top of that box card. And you'll notice first this is the jurisdiction of Hartford. This is box number 16-2-2. It's in Division 111. And the nature of the card is a structure fire in a non-hydranted area, which means they'll need tenders to bring in water. And the specific location is the township of Hartford and Rubicon. Over here on the left side is the alarm level. A still alarm is generally any alarm that can be handled by the individual fire department. If they're in a still alarm situation, they don't even really call the box alarm at all. That just means Hartford's going to handle its own business. But there is a next level up called a working still. A working still is not a MABAS event, but it is on the box card for dispatchers to reference. A working still means we have an incident, we might need a little bit of help, but we don't want to activate the MABAS division and make this a formal incident. So in this working still, if you'll notice, there are engines from Hartford and St. Lawrence would be involved, tenders from Slinger and St. Lawrence, an ambulance would come from Hartford, nowhere else. St. Lawrence would send a chief to help. Special equipment would include the Slinger RIT, which also has the capability of replenishing the air tanks for the fire department. And then they may need to call We Energies Gas and Electric. And over on the right, you'll notice in a change of quarters, Lifestar Ambulance would be sent over to backfill the Hartford station. We're going to talk about that more in a little bit. Above the working still level, it actually becomes a MABAS event, and that's a box alarm. If they were to call box 16-2-2 to the box level, you'll notice that Lifestar would send an ambulance to the scene of the incident. And for change of quarters, then, Germantown would send an engine to sit at the Hartford Fire Department to cover any additional fire calls, and Richfield would send an ambulance to sit at the Hartford Fire Department to handle any EMS calls that come in during this incident. You'll notice at the bottom there are various box levels, box, second, third. Frequently they go all the way up to the 5th level. So what would happen if you're in a MABAS at the box level and it got elevated to the 2nd box? Well, in the change of quarters, you'll notice there's a Richfield ambulance and a Germantown engine. The Germantown engine in a 2nd box would then move up to the scene. Just below there, you'd see Hustisford would then be asked to send an engine to backfill the station. But the Richfield ambulance would remain in their change of quarters unless it gets elevated to the 3rd box. If it got to the 3rd level, then Richfield would move up to the scene. And over on the right, you'd see West Bend would then backfill with an ambulance, and Woodland would send an engine. At the very bottom of this same card, you'll notice there's some additional information. There are excavators, which are frequently required on a structure fire. If the house is a total loss and you need to plow that house into the foundation for safety, that's where they would get the excavators. Across on the right, there's some phone numbers that dispatch might use to notify Chief Kudek in West Bend if it's a full 2nd box. And then Red Cross's phone number is there in the Milwaukee Fire Bell. They come and provide sandwiches and hot drinks for the firefighters. And at the very bottom, there's some useful information, including the address of the fire department and the location of the Knox box, so you can get in if you need to. Now, what kinds of MABAS cards are there? Well, in Division 111, there are 9 cards available, and this is very common across the divisions in Wisconsin. So you might have a structure fire in a hydranted area, so water is available, or a structure fire in a non-hydranted area, which would require the use of tenders to bring in water. The 3rd type of box is an EMS or life safety box. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. You might have a brush fire or a water ice rescue, hazmat incident, technical rescue, and a target hazard is some facility, building, or factory in your jurisdiction that, because of the nature of what they do, presents an additional risk. Either an oil refinery or a fireworks factory, or there's some kind of explosive or hazardous chemicals present, that might require some special pre-planning for different kinds of resources. That would be considered a target hazard. And then at the bottom, a disaster. Disaster is when all hell is broken loose and all sorts of resources are required in order to deal with it. There is a standardized box numbering system. It starts with the jurisdiction. So in the case of the first box we looked at, Hartford is 16. All their unit numbers, their engine numbers, and their ambulances begin with a 16. The specific sub-area is the 2nd portion of the box number. So the town of Hartford and Rubicon would be a 2. And the type of box card, structure fire in a tender area, is a 2. So box card 16-2-2 means a Hartford in the town of Rubicon structure fire tender box. Life safety box is something of particular interest to Lifestar because we provide ambulances. So let's take a look at Richfield's Life Safety Box 19-1-3. Life safety is an incident that requires a large number of ambulances and other resources, but is primarily a mass casualty type of incident or an incident with so many risks to patients and the possibility of a high number of patients that you need lots more ambulances than you would get under normal circumstances. So in the box here, you'll notice that Richfield is jurisdiction 19. The location is zone 1, which would be Richfield east of Hillside Road. And then the life safety box would make it a 3, so 19-1-3, and we're in MABAS Division 111. And if they call this box to the working still level, Lifestar is going to be expected to send an ambulance to the scene. You'll notice that at the still level, both of Richfield's ambulances are listed. And then at the BLS level, Jackson would also be sending an ambulance to the scene for the working still. And that all call for manpower means they're going to be paging out all of the Richfield responders to let them know that extra manpower is required, and they might put Flight for Life on standby for the incident as well. If this moves up to a box level, all of the resources at the working still are still expected. Plus, you'll notice all the way over on the change of quarters, Lifestar is going to send a second ambulance to sit at the Richfield station for a change of quarters. But look at all the ambulances that are going to be involved in a box alarm for life safety. You have 7 ambulances on scene, 2 Richfield, 1 Jackson, 1 Lifestar, a Lisbon ambulance at the ALS level, and 2 BLS ambulances from Menominee Falls and Germantown. And then over on the right, that Lifestar change of quarters. That's a lot of ambulance resources for this mass casualty incident. If you were to elevate to the second level, you'll notice that the Hartford engine would move over to the engine section there, so you have an additional engine on scene. And you'll notice that the notation says JAWS. So Hartford is to send an engine that has hydraulic extrication tools on board. The Hartford chief would then move up to the scene, and the Lifestar ambulance, the second one, would also move up to the scene. That one can be BLS in nature if that's all we have. So in addition to the 7 ambulances that were already there, we're adding a West Bend ALS ambulance, a Sussex BLS ambulance, and then Hartford is sending an ambulance to backfill the station. So, if we get called in on a box alarm of any kind, how do we respond to a MABAS call at Lifestar? When you're paged by the 911 center, the first thing you do is acknowledge the page. And then you need to notify Lifestar Dispatch that you've been paged for a box alarm. The next thing you'll do is switch over to IFERN. Again, IFERN is a talk group on the Wiscom system that goes to all agencies. All our radios are programmed to handle IFERN, so that's a way to speak to agencies whose radio system may not be compatible with our radio system. On the IFERN talk group, you're going to speak to the division that requested you. That information should have been included in the page that you received to activate the MABAS system. So in this case, if it's Division 111, you're going to call Division 111 from Lifestar Ambulance. You do not use your unit number. That is part of the MABAS contract, and it is part of the agreement on terminology for apparatus and the communications plan. When you're doing mutual aid, you are not Lifestar 3052 or Lifestar 201. You are simply Lifestar Ambulance. The name of the jurisdiction for us is Lifestar, and the name of the apparatus is Ambulance. If Lifestar had engines, you would be calling Division 111 from Lifestar Engine or Lifestar Truck. But all we have are ambulances, so it would be Lifestar Ambulance. Do not, please, use the unit number. It confuses the dispatchers. It's part of the MABAS contracted agreement, and it also makes us look unprofessional. When they acknowledge you calling, you just tell them that you are en route. When you arrive on scene or at the change of quarters, if that's what the box card calls for, you call the same division and you inform them that you are on scene. Some of the more astute among you might say, well, if the MABAS divisions are county dispatchers and you've already acknowledged the page with the county, why are we getting on iPhone and talking to the same dispatcher and telling them the same thing? Well, the reason you're doing that is because the incident commander is also listening to iPhone, and by this time there may be a staging officer or an operations officer whose job it is to track incoming resources. So you might be talking to dispatch, but what you're really doing is relaying the information to the incident commander on the iPhone channel. After that, you do not call the incident commander and ask for an assignment. You don't call them and say, where do you want us to park? What would you like us to do? Do you have an assignment to us? All of those are signs of amateurs, and you're also interfering with the incident itself. The incident commander is busy. He or she has a lot of things on their mind, and asking them for an assignment is just interfering with the process. You wait to be told what to do. They are listening. They know you're there. They will call you when they need you. And if they weren't listening, that's on them as an incident commander. That's not your responsibility. Calling and asking for an assignment is very close to self-dispatching, and we agreed not to do that when we signed the MABAS contract. Be prepared to change your radio to whatever working frequency or talk group that you're assigned. Frequently it will be Fireground Red, but the incident commander might choose to put ambulances on a different talk group or on a different Fireground group. So pay attention and switch to the appropriate radio group. You do not need to update Lifestar dispatch of anything that you're doing once you go en route. You belong to the incident commander until you're done with your assignment. When you are released, you call the MABAS Division 1 last time and you say Division 111 from Lifestar Ambulance. Wait for them to acknowledge, and then you say we have been released by the incident commander and are returning. And that should be your last conversation with the division. At that point, you can switch back to Lifestar's talk group and inform dispatch that you're back in service and wait for instructions. If you'd like some more information about MABAS, or you're just the kind of person who likes to read the details, I would refer you to the MABAS Wisconsin webpage. The address for the page is www.mabaswisconsin.org. I would caution you that this webpage is not updated quite as frequently as I would prefer, but they do have the latest version of several important documents available for download. The first of those is frequently called WEM 8. That's the Wisconsin Division of Emergency Management rules with regard to the MABAS agreement. That same agreement can be found online anywhere you research Wisconsin legislative documents. For example, the same place you would go to download DHS 110 will also have a copy of WEM 8. You can also get a copy of the MABAS contract and their policies, procedures, and guidelines, which were last revised in 2017. They're both available for download in PDF format on the MABAS Wisconsin webpage. Finally, for those of you that are curious why Lifestar EMS requires you to have hazardous materials, NIMS, and WMD certifications as a condition of your employment, those requirements are part of your EMT license found in the Wisconsin EMT curriculum. That also applies to the AEMT and paramedic curriculum. The relevant sections are 8-4, 8-5, and 8-6. Under 8.5, under the NIMS, you are not technically required to have the ICS certificates in hand, but you are required to have studied the material and to have been tested on that material. So most EMT programs will simply have you take the courses. WMD is also a condition of having a license in the state of Wisconsin, and you have to renew your WMD every 2 years. Thank you for joining me. If you have any additional questions, contact the Lifestar Training and Education Center, and I would be happy to help you.